Engineer mocked the black mechanic. If you fix this, I'll marry you. He fixed it. James, a skilled mechanic, worked in his small auto shop, fixing cars that others couldn't. One day, a sleek luxury car pulled into the lot, and out stepped Laura, a confident, well-dressed woman who immediately looked down on James. She casually tapped the hood and said, "This car's been acting up, but I'm sure someone like you can't fix it." With a mocking smile, she added, "If you can fix this, I'll marry you." James, undeterred by her arrogance, calmly replied, "I'll fix it." It wasn't about the bet, it was about proving he could do what she doubted. James had always been used to people underestimating him. It wasn't new for him to be dismissed, to be looked down upon by those who thought their education or wealth made them superior. But today felt different. Laura, the wealthy engineer, had driven up to his humble auto shop in her shiny, expensive car, certain that he wouldn't be able to solve the problem. The way she looked at him, like he was just a guy with a wrench in his hand, felt all too familiar, but he refused to let it get to him. He had his work to do, and no one, no matter how confident or dismissive, could take that from him. Laura watched from the side as James got to work. She flipped through her phone, clearly unimpressed, and made no effort to hide the fact that she didn't expect anything but failure. This is going to be a waste of time, she thought, thinking back to all the high-tech engineers who had failed to figure out the issue. To her, this was all just another game, another opportunity to prove how much smarter she was. James didn't rush. His movements were measured and steady, his hands moving with a practiced precision that made the car seem like a part of him. There was no panic, no frantic fixing. Just steady, calm work, which irritated Laura even more. How could he be so confident? Why didn't he seem more desperate to impress her? As the hours ticked by, she found herself looking up from her phone more often, her curiosity piqued despite herself. He hadn't made a single mistake. In fact, James wasn't just fixing the issue. He was explaining, little by little, why things weren't working and how he was going to solve them. She'd never met a mechanic who could talk about the inner workings of a car like he was teaching a class. It wasn't just knowledge, it was passion. The way he described the parts, the way he understood each engine as if it had its own personality. It was something she'd never encountered in her high-powered world of engineers, where everything was controlled by specs and numbers. James wasn't just solving a problem, he was treating the car like an old friend. He would take a moment to tap the side of the engine, then listen for a sound, his fingers gently running over the components, almost as if feeling them. "Sometimes, you have to listen to the machine," he explained without even looking up, sensing her questioning gaze. "It tells you what's wrong if you're willing to pay attention." Laura blinked, momentarily taken aback. She had heard similar things from a few of her high-end engineers, but they said it with such technical jargon that it never really resonated with her. James said it simply, but with a depth of understanding that she couldn't ignore. Time seemed to slow down as James continued to work, taking apart parts of the car that had previously stumped her engineers. She had expected him to fumble, to make a mistake. But there he was, methodically finding the issue. She couldn't help but feel a strange mix of admiration and embarrassment. Her high-powered engineers, who were so highly paid, couldn't fix the problem. Yet here was this man, from a small shop, doing what they couldn't, and doing it with ease. When James finally finished, he gave the car a final check and stood back, his eyes scanning over the now perfect engine. "It's done," he said simply. Laura walked over, her steps slow, as if she were still processing the fact that he had actually done it. She had expected to be proved right, to see him fail, but instead, he had succeeded beyond her expectations. The engine was humming smoothly, no sign of the trouble it had once had. It was like a completely new machine. She looked at James, trying to find something, anything, to say that would bring back the smugness she had felt when she first arrived. But the words didn't come. Instead, she simply stood there, her arms folded, staring at the car and then at him. I didn't think you could," she admitted quietly, almost begrudgingly. James didn't smile. He didn't need to. He knew what he'd accomplished. But it wasn't about showing off, it was about doing the job right. "I told you I would," he replied, his tone calm, almost reassuring. She bit her lip, glancing at the car again. The reality of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about the deep knowledge, the skill, and the experience that James had. Something she had been too quick to dismiss. She hadn't expected him to challenge her view of the world. But somehow, that's exactly what had happened. Her thoughts were interrupted when James cleared his throat. "You'll need to pay for the repairs," he said, his tone steady but matter-of-fact. Laura's pride flared up again, and for a moment, she considered arguing. But then she thought back to the way James had worked. His dedication, his focus, and the humility with which he had done his job. No one could say he hadn't earned his fee. Instead of arguing, she nodded and reached into her bag for her wallet. "How much?" she asked, her voice softer than before. James gave her a fair price for the work. It wasn't about overcharging, but about valuing his expertise. Laura didn't blink. She handed him the money, but there was something in her eyes now, something that wasn't there before. Respect. "Thank you," she said quietly, her tone genuine, if still laced with surprise. "You've earned it." James nodded, not needing any further acknowledgement. His pride wasn't tied to her approval, it was about doing the work well. But as she turned to leave, there was something in her voice that was different, something more than just the transactional nature of their earlier conversation. There was an unspoken understanding between them now. If you're enjoying this story, please give it a thumbs up. The following weeks brought an unexpected change in the relationship between James and Laura. She continued to return to his shop, not out of necessity, but out of curiosity. She would bring her car in for regular checkups, just to see what James was working on next. Every time, she stood by, asking questions, soaking in everything he said, watching how easily he made repairs that seemed impossible. And each time, James gave her the space to learn, but didn't offer more than what she needed. He didn't care about impressing her, but there was something refreshing about her willingness to learn. One afternoon, Laura arrived at the shop in a rush, her usual calm demeanor replaced by something else, something more vulnerable. Her car had broken down again, this time in the middle of a critical meeting with a potential client. Her frustration was palpable, but as soon as she saw James, that frustration shifted into something else. "I can't believe this is happening again," Laura muttered, slamming the door of her car shut. "Everything I touch breaks." James looked at her, his eyes scanning her face. There was a moment of silence, an unspoken understanding between them. "It's just a car, Laura. It's not you," he said gently. His voice was calm, reassuring, like he was reminding her of something she had forgotten. "Things break, and that's not a reflection of who you are." Laura hesitated before meeting his eyes. "You're right, but, this time, I don't know how to fix it. I'm scared." James wiped his hands on a rag and walked over. "What's really bothering you?" he asked, more out of curiosity than anything else. She hesitated for a moment, biting her lip, before finally speaking. "I don't know. Everything feels like it's falling apart. My career. I've spent so much time proving myself in a world that doesn't believe in me. And now, I feel like I'm losing control. It's all falling apart, one piece at a time." James looked at her, studying the weariness in her face. She wasn't just talking about a broken car. She was talking about something deeper, something that only the people who worked with their hands understood. The difference between fixing a machine and fixing your life was that machines had parts you could replace. People didn't. "You've been fighting so hard, haven't you?" James said softly, his tone kind, not patronizing. "But it's not about fixing everything yourself. Sometimes, you just have to trust someone else to help you fix things." Laura looked at him, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you don't have to do everything alone. You're not supposed to," he said, his voice calm but direct. "You're capable of more than you think. But you've got to stop thinking you need to do it all by yourself. It's okay to ask for help, and sometimes, it's okay to let someone in." Her eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, Laura felt a sense of relief, as if someone had taken the burden off her shoulders, even if just for a moment. She wasn't used to feeling vulnerable, especially not in front of someone like James, someone she had once looked down on. But there was something in his simplicity, in the way he carried himself, that made her feel like she could trust him in ways she hadn't trusted anyone else in a long time. If this moment touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up. As James got to work on her car, Laura stood silently, watching him with a new appreciation. The car wasn't just broken, it was an obstacle in her life that she hadn't known how to navigate. And as she watched him fix it with such ease, she realized something important. She didn't need to have all the answers. She didn't need to do everything by herself. There were people in her life, like James, who could help, if only she was willing to let them. When the car was fixed, James handed her the keys without fanfare. "You're all set," he said, his voice kind but matter-of-fact. Laura stood there for a moment, her hand on the keys, her mind swirling. She could feel the weight of her own hesitation, the lingering fear of trusting someone, of allowing herself to be vulnerable. But something had changed in her, something small but significant. She wasn't just fixed because her car was running again. She had learned to let go, to trust, and that, in itself, was a form of healing. "Thank you," Laura said quietly, her voice softer than before. She looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time, not just as the mechanic who had fixed her car, but as someone who had shown her that even the most broken things could be fixed, if only we allowed ourselves to be open to help. The next few weeks were filled with a strange sense of change. Laura continued to return to the shop, not just to have her car fixed, but because there was something about James she couldn't ignore. He wasn't just fixing her vehicle, he was somehow helping to repair parts of her own life that she hadn't even realized were broken. Still, there were moments of doubt. Deep down, Laura wasn't sure if she was ready to confront her vulnerabilities. She had spent years building walls around herself, walls made of professional success, confidence, and the need to prove she was better than the world that often doubted her. But now, those walls seemed to be crumbling, and she wasn't sure what would be left once they were gone. One afternoon, as she walked into James's shop, her phone rang. It was a call she had been dreading for weeks. Her latest project at work was falling apart. The clients were unhappy, the engineers were behind schedule, and the pressure was mounting. She could hear the frustration in her boss's voice on the other end. "Laura, we need this fixed. Now. You promised results. If you can't deliver, I don't know how much longer we can keep you on this project." The words hit her like a blow to the chest. She hung up the phone with trembling hands, staring at the screen for a few moments before slipping it back into her pocket. She was used to handling pressure, but today it felt like too much. Her chest tightened, and her breathing became shallow. She walked into the shop, forcing a smile as she greeted James, but he could see the change in her. "What's going on, Laura?" James asked, his voice steady but concerned. He could read her easily now. He could tell when something was weighing on her, even when she tried to hide it. Laura forced a laugh. "It's nothing," she said, shaking her head. "Just work stuff, you know." James didn't buy it. He walked over to her, his hands steady as he looked into her eyes. "If something's wrong, you don't have to pretend it's not. What's really going on?" She paused, the walls she'd carefully built starting to break down. She took a deep breath and finally let the words spill out. "I'm failing, James. The project's falling apart, my boss is losing faith in me, and I feel like I'm losing control. I don't know what to do." James stood there for a long moment, considering her words. He knew what it felt like to struggle, to feel like you weren't good enough no matter how hard you tried. But he also knew the power of perseverance and self-belief. He put his hands on her shoulders gently, his voice calm and soothing. "Laura, everyone falls short sometimes. It's not about never failing, it's about how you get back up. You've got the skills. You've got the drive. But more than that, you've got heart. You just have to remember that when things get tough. You've done hard things before. You can do this too." Laura's eyes welled up with tears she hadn't expected. The vulnerability she had kept hidden for so long was finally starting to surface. She had spent so much of her life building a persona of perfection, but the truth was, she wasn't invincible. She wasn't the perfect engineer, the perfect employee. And it was okay to admit that. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaky but grateful. I don't know why I'm telling you this. But I've never had someone tell me I don't have to be perfect." James smiled softly, the weight of the moment sinking in. "You don't have to be perfect, Laura. Nobody is." The silence between them stretched for a while, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a release, like the start of something new. Laura realized that she didn't have to carry the weight of everything on her own anymore. She didn't have to be strong all the time, not with people like James by her side. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't alone in this. She could get through it, just as she had gotten through so many challenges before. If this moment moved you, please give it a thumbs up. But even as the day progressed, another challenge loomed on the horizon. Laura had made strides in confronting her vulnerability, but the future still seemed uncertain. Would her work crisis resolve? Could she finally let go of the need to be perfect, to prove herself to everyone? As she left the shop that day, she felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. But the question still hung in the air: would she be able to apply what she had learned about herself to the challenges ahead? Would she be able to embrace the imperfections and find her way through the mess? Laura's mind raced as the days passed. She had opened up to James in a way she hadn't with anyone in years, and yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. Her boss had given her one more chance to fix the project, but Laura felt torn. The pressure to succeed was immense, and yet, for the first time, she realized it wasn't the only thing that mattered. She had spent so many years chasing perfection and approval, but now, after everything James had shown her, she wondered if there was another way. One morning, as she sat in her office, looking at the chaotic mess of numbers and plans on her desk, her phone buzzed. It was James. "I was thinking about you," the text read. "You've got this. Don't let the pressure break you. And remember, you're not alone in this." She smiled softly, a warmth spreading through her chest. His words meant more than she could explain. It wasn't just that he had fixed her car or helped her solve a mechanical issue. It was that he had given her something far more valuable: belief in herself. It was something she had been missing for so long. That afternoon, Laura decided to take a different approach with the project. Instead of pushing herself harder, she took a step back and asked for help. She reached out to a colleague, someone she had often dismissed as less experienced, and together they reworked parts of the design she had been struggling with. It was a humbling experience, but as they worked together, Laura realized how much more effective collaboration could be than working alone. She was learning to lean on others, just as James had taught her to lean on herself. By the time the final presentation arrived, Laura stood before her boss, feeling a quiet confidence she had never known. The project wasn't perfect, but it was better than anything she had done before. More importantly, it felt like a reflection of who she was: imperfect, yes, but real. And that, she realized, was enough. Her boss, who had been doubtful before, was surprisingly impressed. "This is good work, Laura," he said, his voice grudgingly respectful. "You've really turned things around." Laura felt a sense of pride, but it wasn't the kind she had expected. It wasn't about the praise or the approval, it was about the fact that she had done this on her own terms. She had faced her doubts, and she had come through stronger. If you found this story inspiring, please give it a thumbs up. After the meeting, Laura drove to James's shop, the weight of the day lifting from her shoulders with every passing mile. When she arrived, he was working under the hood of another car. She walked up to him, feeling the weight of everything that had changed inside her. "I did it," she said simply, her voice filled with emotion. James looked up, his eyes softening as he saw the genuine pride in her face. "I knew you would." For a moment, they just stood there, the silence between them speaking louder than any words could. Laura realized that James had given her something far beyond the technical skills to fix a car. He had shown her how to heal, how to be kind to herself, how to stop chasing perfection and just embrace the journey. "I've learned so much from you," she said, her voice quieter now, but full of gratitude. James smiled, the same quiet smile he had given her from the very beginning. "We all have something to teach, Laura. You just needed to listen to yourself. If you've ever learned something valuable in the most unexpected places, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story." Laura left the shop that evening with a heart full of peace. She wasn't perfect, and she didn't need to be. For the first time in years, she felt ready to face the future, knowing that she didn't have to carry the weight of the world alone. And as she drove home, the evening sky turning shades of gold, she realized something important. The journey wasn't about finding a perfect solution. It was about trusting the process, embracing the mess, and knowing that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places. Weeks passed, and the changes in Laura were subtle but profound. She had stopped striving for perfection in every aspect of her life. Instead, she focused on the joy of learning, of growth, and of trusting others. The project she had once feared was now a success, not because everything had gone flawlessly, but because she had learned to ask for help, to embrace imperfection, and to believe in her own abilities. And with each small victory, the weight she had carried for so long seemed to grow lighter. Her relationship with James also evolved. What had started as a professional exchange, then grew into mutual respect, began to blossom into something more. They spent more time together outside the shop, sometimes just talking over coffee, other times working on projects, learning from each other. James had shown her the value of quiet strength, and Laura, in turn, brought a new perspective to his world. They made each other better, in ways neither had expected. One evening, as they sat on the porch of James's small shop after another long day of work, Laura realized how much her life had changed. It wasn't just about the success at work, or the car that had once been broken and was now running smoothly. It was about the transformation that had occurred within her, the quiet acceptance of her imperfections, the trust she had learned to place in others, and the love she had discovered for herself along the way. James looked at her, his expression soft and steady. "You've come a long way, Laura," he said, his voice filled with a quiet pride. "You were always capable of this. You just needed to see it." Laura smiled, the weight in her chest easing as she reflected on the journey. "I couldn't have done it without you, James. You showed me how to stop fighting everything and just be." James chuckled softly. "Sometimes, the most important lesson is the one you don't see coming. It's the quiet moments that matter the most." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of pink and orange. The world around them felt peaceful, as if everything had found its place. Laura knew, deep down, that this was the beginning of something beautiful, not just with James, but with herself. She had learned to let go of the impossible standards she had set for herself, and now, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the night crept in and the stars began to twinkle, James turned to her, his voice soft. "I'm proud of you, Laura." Tears welled in Laura's eyes, but this time, they weren't tears of frustration or doubt, they were tears of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." With those simple words, she realized that life didn't need to be perfect to be beautiful. It was about the people you met, the lessons you learned, and the love you gave and received along the way. And in this moment, sitting on the porch with James, she knew she had everything she needed to move forward. If you've enjoyed this story and found hope in it, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the beauty in life's imperfections. As the night deepened, Laura felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The journey had been long, and at times, difficult. But it had led her to a place of understanding, to a place where she could see the value in everything. Every challenge, every mistake, and every person who had crossed her path. And with that, she knew the future was full of endless possibilities. She wasn't just fixed. She was whole.